Welcome to the debate. Have you ever worried that by waiting for the absolute perfect opportunity, the perfect job, the perfect relationship, you might end up completely empty-handed?
Oh, definitely. It's a huge fear for a lot of people.
Right. Well, today we are looking at an ancient Native American fable that tests exactly that fear. Imagine you are standing at the edge of this massive cornfield that just stretches all the way to the horizon.
The imagery is super vivid. You can almost see it in your head.
Yeah, it's a great setup. So, a wise grandfather brings you and a group of children to this field for a test. The goal is simple. Walk through the field and pick just one single ear of corn. The person who brings back the biggest ear gets a great reward.
And, everyone's excited, right? They all shout and get ready to run in. But then the grandfather drops this one critical rule.
Exactly. There is a strict rule. Once you walk past a stalk of corn, you cannot turn back. You must walk at a steady pace, always moving forward.
No going backwards.
None. So, when navigating this endless cornfield of life, how do we avoid the ultimate regret of reaching the end with nothing? Is it better to take a structured, scientific approach, relying on data collection and calculated choices?
Or is this really a philosophical journey, about personal transformation and learning to let go of control?
I argue that we survive the field by being scientific, by carefully analyzing our environment and practically adjusting our level of greed as we go.
And I take the opposing view. I argue that true success in this field is actually about moving through three necessary stages of human inner growth. We can call them the camel, the lion, and the child. It's a journey toward reaching a state of pure acceptance.
So let's start by laying out our core perspectives on how a person actually survives this walk. From my standpoint, life requires a systematic strategy. You don't just wander aimlessly hoping to stumble upon a giant ear of corn by pure luck.
Right.
To win the grandfather's test, you need to divide that vast field into clear sections. Let's say 7 specific stages of your journey.
7 stages? That sounds very rigid.
Well, it's not rigid, it's just methodical. In the early stages, you don't pick anything, you just sample the field. You figure out the mean and the variance.
The mean and the variance?
Yeah, if you're listening to this and wondering what that means, it is just a mathematical way of saying you figure out the average size of the corn and how much that size changes from stalk to stalk.
So you are basically treating the field like a giant laboratory.
Absolutely. By observing environmental factors, like how much sunlight hits the leaves, the soil moisture, the root space, whether there's weed competition, you figure out the hidden rules of success.
Okay, but
if the average size is 6 inches and most corn is between 5 and 7 inches, an 8-inch ear is actually a great find. Finally, once you have that data, you use what we call balanced greed. You pick an ear that is clearly above average based on your math, rather than risking absolutely everything by holding out for a legendary, perfect piece of corn that might not even exist.
I come at it from a totally different way. That scientific approach sounds incredibly safe, but it completely misses the heart of the grandfather's lesson. This fable isn't a farming manual, and it isn't a math equation.
Then what is it?
It is a metaphor for the human soul. It perfectly mirrors the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche's concept of the 3 Metamorphoses.
Oh, Nietzsche. Okay.
Yeah. The journey through the cornfield is actually the journey of a human life. It starts as a camel, where you endure immense patience and carry heavy burdens, obeying the rules of the world.
Right.
Then, it transforms into a lion, a stage of youthful courage, rebellion, and explosive desire. And finally, you become a child, a state of pure affirmation, where you let go of greed entirely and simply say, "Thus it is," with a genuine smile.
So you're saying the corn doesn't even matter?
I'm saying without going through these profound inner changes, even a person with a perfectly calculated scientific strategy will reach the edge of the field as a tired, burdened camel. They might be holding a mathematically acceptable ear of corn, but they will be filled with emotional regret.
Well, both of our approaches seem to agree on one fundamental reality about the beginning of this journey. The start is slow, and it requires holding back. You don't just sprint into the field and grab the first thing you see.
Exactly.
But we disagree entirely on the purpose of this first stage. In my view, the beginning of the field is simply about good data analysis.
But why call it data analysis? That sounds so cold. It's a lived experience.
Because that's functionally what is happening. You are deliberately suppressing your extreme greed early on so you can accurately observe reality. If you just grab the first big ear you see, you miss the whole picture.
I don't know if I agree with that framing.
Setting your greed aside in those first few sections is a practical, calculated step to ensure you don't pick too early and end up with something mediocre, or wait too long and run out of options. Regret happens when you feel you made a blind choice. If you gather data first, you know you played the odds correctly. That mathematical certainty is what kills regret.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that math kills regret. That early stage isn't just a calculated period of taking notes. It is the camel stage, and the camel stage is instinctively difficult for human beings because it involves true pain.
Pain? Walking through a cornfield? I mean, come on.
Yes, emotional and psychological pain. You are kneeling in the dirt. You are bending your back. You are shouldering the heavy rules and duties of the world. Think about what Nietzsche called the dragon of thou shalt.
Let's clarify that for a second. The dragon of thou shalt.
Basically, it's the giant, terrifying monster of society's expectations. It is your teachers, your parents, your bosses, the culture you live in, constantly telling you what you shall do.
Right, okay.
Thou shalt get good grades. Thou shalt sit quietly. Thou shalt not pick the corn yet. You endure long periods of patience under the weight of this dragon. You aren't just observing data, you are building physical and emotional endurance.
Wait, let me stop you there. I'm genuinely confused by that. If the camel phase is just blindly carrying heavy burdens and suffering through the thou shouts of the world, doesn't that make us entirely passive?
It's not passive, it's foundational.
But it sounds passive. It's like carrying a heavy backpack of farming tools across the field without actually looking down at the soil. The value of patience is only useful if we are actively using that time to check the irrigation and the nutrient balance.
But
we shouldn't be suffering just for the sake of suffering. Think about an entry-level job. If you just put your head down and suffer through making spreadsheets for 2 years, you're just a victim. But if you use those 2 years to study how the business works, you're a scientist. The pain of patience only makes sense if it's producing actionable data.
it is not suffering for the sake of suffering. The camel is gathering the raw material of discipline. Think about learning to play the piano.
Okay.
Before you can write a beautiful song, you have to sit there for hours playing boring scales. It hurts your fingers. It's tedious. You are obeying the rules of the sheet music.
Sure, but you learn the notes.
Yes, but if you skip the discipline of the camel and only treat the field as a detached laboratory, you don't feel the weight of life. You are observing the soil, sure, but you aren't letting the reality of the harvest shape your character. You are trying to cheat the emotional toll of growing up.
Well, eventually, the scales have to end. Patience has its limits, right? Eventually, you have to start picking. Which brings us to the middle of the field, where things heat up. This is where we have to manage our ambition.
Right.
From the scientific view, this is where the harvest strategy comes into play.
And how does science tell us to harvest?
You have to adjust the intensity of your greed step by step. We can categorize this into 3 levels. First, there's extreme greed, where you only look for truly gigantic, legendary ears of corn. This carries a huge risk of leaving you empty-handed.
Obviously.
Then there is realistic greed, focusing on what is clearly much larger than average. And finally, there is balanced greed, which is simply picking what is reliably above average based on your earlier data.
So you just step down your desires until you find something safe?
You step them down until you find what is mathematically optimal. The science teaches us that the best outcome always comes from moderate, balanced greed. Pursuing absolute perfection causes you to miss golden opportunities, while settling too easily wastes your potential.
See, you are categorizing extreme greed as a simple mathematical error, a miscalculation of odds. But in the journey of the soul, extreme greed is actually an unavoidable and necessary life stage. It's the lion.
The lion.
Yes, youth requires a time of explosive desire. The lion is the stage of courage and rebellion where you tear apart those heavy rules of the camel. You slay the dragon of thou shalt, you roar I will, and you declare your absolute freedom.
That's an interesting point, though I would frame it differently. If the lion stage is defined by explosive desire, and you admit it's about tearing things down, isn't that exactly what the grandfather's fable is warning us against?
How so?
The rule is you can't go back. If you spend the middle of your life as a lion, roaring I will, and walking past hundreds of perfectly good, well-grown stalks of corn because your explosive desire demands absolute perfection, you reach the end of the field with nothing.
Well,
Think about someone navigating modern life like a lion. Let's look at a young professional who job hops every 3 months because no job is perfect enough. Or think about dating apps. Someone endlessly swiping left on great people because they are looking for someone just 1% better.
right, but
They have courage, sure, but they are starving. They end up alone. The fable is literally a warning against the lion phase.
No, it is a warning against getting trapped in the lion phase, not against experiencing it.
I don't see the difference. If it destroys your chances, why do it?
Because if you hesitate in fear and fail to tear apart the rules of the camel, you miss precious opportunities anyway. Look at it this way. A person who acts with balanced greed from the very beginning never actually figures out what they are truly capable of.
They get the corn, though.
But they are just a cautious camel who figured out a safe math equation. They never felt the fire of wanting everything.
At what cost, though?
At the cost of truly living. The destruction the lion causes is the fertile ash that allows the final stage of life to bloom. You must have courage before you can have creation. You have to know what it feels like to demand the impossible so that when you finally do accept something, it is a choice made out of wisdom, not just a choice made out of fear.
But creation in a cornfield isn't magical. It comes from understanding the environment. The ultimate goal of this walk isn't just to feel a wide range of intense emotions or burn things down to see what happens.
Then what is the goal?
The ultimate goal is to recognize that behind every success and failure lie hidden variables. Why is that corn stalk over there so small? Oh, it has too much shade and weed competition. Why is this one massive? Consistent water rhythm and healthy root space.
Okay.
If we analyze the conditions, success can be repeated. A good life is one where we learn the rules of the environment and harvest successfully based on those rules. We don't just praise the final result, we understand the conditions that created it. We explain the how and the why of the world.
Understanding soil moisture does not teach you how to die without regret.
I think it does, actually.
No, it teaches you how to farm. The ultimate goal of this walk is the child stage. It is a state of pure newness and affirmation. Think about old age. Many people reach the end of their lives, and instead of finding peace, they cling harder to their possessions.
Right.
They become obsessed with what they have and what they missed. They become possessive, wounding their own mind and body with stress.
Which is exactly why having a system early on prevents that stress.
But the system doesn't cure the mind. The child stage is about letting go of greed entirely. It is about accepting whatever comes and saying, "Thus it is," with a genuine smile. It's simply enjoying the breeze in the field.
I mean, it sounds nice.
An old person who used perfect science to grab the biggest ear of corn, but who is still burdened by stress, always calculating their next move, is a failure in the eyes of philosophy. Think of a millionaire who has everything but is miserable because his neighbor has a slightly bigger yacht. If you haven't learned the child's gratitude, you are carrying a heavy emotional load to the very end, no matter what your math tells you.
I see why you think that. But let me give you a different perspective. Gathering the child's gratitude is a beautiful, poetic concept. But how do you actually reach a state where you can smile and say, "Thus it is"?
By moving through the stages.
But it doesn't just happen by magic. You reach that peaceful state specifically because you adjusted your desires wisely during the harvest. The scientific method of stepping down from extreme greed to realistic greed to balanced greed is the precise mechanism that allows you to let go of regret.
So math forces you to be peaceful? That doesn't make any sense.
Yes, it does. You can act like a pure, affirming child at the end of the field, specifically because you made smart, calculated choices in the middle of the field. You know you did your best with the data you had.
The person who walks out empty-handed because they were too busy roaring like a lion is going to have a very hard time feeling joyful acceptance. Hunger makes it very hard to smile and say, "Thus it is."
But you are assuming that success is holding a physical piece of corn. The philosophical view argues that success is the state of your soul when you reach the edge of the field. Let's look again at your 7-stage harvest, but through the lens of inner growth.
Okay, let's look at it. You gather the camel's endurance, the lion's courage, and the child's gratitude. This flow completes a human life. If you skip these stages, you end up in old age still burdened like a camel.
Even with the corn.
Exactly. You might have a perfectly average, scientifically selected piece of corn in your hand. Maybe you have a nice house and a safe pension. But inside, you are still carrying the weight of the world, still terrified of making a mistake. The fable and philosophy ask you directly, right now, looking at your own life, which stage are you stuck in?
I would argue that recognizing you are stuck is just another data point. It's a condition you can analyze and fix. If you feel burdened, you look at your variables. Have I been acting with extreme greed? Have I ignored the reality of the variance in this environment? Have I ignored the shade in the soil?
You are turning a crisis of the soul into a math problem.
Because math offers a solution. Let me provide a clear summary of my perspective on this entire journey so our listeners, regardless of their background, can really grasp it. Life is exactly like that vast, intimidating cornfield. We only get one pass through it.
Right.
If we pay close attention to our environment, the sunlight, the soil, the water rhythm, and if we use balanced greed instead of chasing impossible perfection, we can make smart choices. Science teaches us that by understanding the rules, we can optimize our harvest. We can look at the data, step down our intense desires, and avoid the profound, heartbreaking regret of walking out empty-handed.
And to give a clear summary from my view, even the smartest, most calculated choices won't matter at all if we don't grow on the inside. You can have all the data in the world, but if your soul is immature, you will suffer.
We have to learn the patience and endurance of the camel to build discipline. We must summon the fiery courage of the lion to break free from what society tells us to do. And finally, we must discover the joyful, peaceful acceptance of the child. Otherwise, we carry heavy emotional burdens to the very end of our lives, regardless of what prizes we are holding in our hands. Without inner transformation, only regret accumulates.
You know, it seems clear that the richness of the grandfather's fable is exactly why it has survived for so long. When you look at it, these two ideas might actually need each other to work.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. The scientific observation of the field and its hidden variables helps us physically survive the journey. It keeps us from starving. It puts food on the table.
Right, but the philosophical journey of the soul, moving from the camel to the lion to the child, is what helps us find peace with whatever corn we ultimately decide to harvest.
Exactly. There is so much more to explore in the wisdom of this fable and how these transformations and calculations shape our daily choices. It's something everyone has to navigate.
As you stand at the edge of your own endless cornfield today, you have to decide, will you measure the soil or will you examine your soul? We leave it up to you to figure out which approach will help you take that first step forward without turning back. Thank you for joining us.